Good afternoon. My name is Alana Lindgren. I am the Dean of the Faculty of Fine Arts here at the University of Victoria. And on behalf of my colleagues and our students, I want to welcome you to this very special event. I would like to begin by acknowledging with respect the Lekwungen peoples, whom we know as the Songhees and Kasapsum Esquimalt nations, on whose territory the University of Victoria stands, and the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you today to a very special conversation between Michelle Chawla, the CEO and Director of the Canada Council for the Arts, and Megan Dickie, the Chair of UVic's Visual Arts Department. We are very fortunate to have Michelle here with us for a day and a half, and it's a jam-packed schedule. Sorry, Michelle. We have Michelle with you today. She's just come from a session with arts leaders. We're taking her on tour. We're taking her to some of our performances. And we did want to have a moment where she could engage with you, friends and colleagues and professionals in the local arts region. Michelle, we were able to invite Michelle thanks to the Orion Fund in Fine Arts, which was established through a very generous gift of an anonymous donor, and it allows us to bring distinguished visitors from other parts of Canada and the world to the University of Victoria and here in the Faculty of Fine Arts. I do want to pause and say thank you to all of you for coming today, and a special thank you to the School of Music for allowing us to be here in this beautiful Philip T. Young Recital Hall. Leading today's discussion, as I said, is Megan Dickie, the chair, the fabulous chair, I have to tell you that as a dean, the fabulous chair of the Department of Visual Arts. Megan is an artist who works in the mediums of sculpture, video, and printmaking. And Megan's artistic research focuses on the seductive tension that exists between reason and play, which she often explores by subverting systems and structures with critically deployed humor. Megan has exhibited across Canada and the United States, and her works can be found in the permanent collections of the University of Saskatchewan, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, and the Nickel Arts Museum. She's also received several project grants from both the BC Arts Council and the Canada Council. Please help me welcome Megan Dickie.
I'm not used to microphones, and I'm definitely not used to a stage. I'm used to the studio classroom, so forgive me if I talk away from the microphone, don't look up, all those kinds of things that don't happen for a performer. But I'm pleased to be here today and to introduce Michelle Chawla, who has led the Canada Council for the Arts as Director and CEO since June 2023. Under Michelle's leadership, the organization ensures that almost 90% of its annual government funding goes directly to the arts sector. This includes support for over 3,500 artists and over 1,900 arts organizations in over 2,000 communities across the country, whose work strengthens the economy, fosters unity, and a sense of belonging. With nearly 30 years in the field of public arts and culture funding, Michelle has extensive leadership expertise in public policy, intergovernmental relations, governance, corporate communications, and major transformative initiatives. Prior to her appointment, she was the Director General of Strategy, Public Affairs, and Arts Engagement, responsible for the executive leadership and direction of a wide range of functions, including communications, strategic planning, research partnerships, international coordination, and cultural diplomacy. She was also previously Secretary General for the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. Michelle is fluently bilingual and comes from a Quebecois and Punjabi background. She is deeply committed to making sure the arts are a vibrant part of Canadians' lives in communities big and small, from coast to coast. Please join me in welcoming Michelle. On? Yeah. Okay, we did practice, but as I said. So yes, very excited to ask these questions today. I'll just talk about the format so people know. We have about 30, 40 minutes for my question period. And then we have, depending if I take 30, then we have 30 minutes for questions from the audience, or about 20 minutes from questions from the audience. We will start to wrap up around 5 o'clock, and I've been told that we gotta be out of here at 5:30, so I might have to get, I might have to be forthright with you folks. Okay, here we go. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Can you describe your goals for the Canada Council under your leadership? And what makes your leadership style innovative or transformational in this moment in time?
Oh, thank you for that question. Hi, everyone. So good to see all of you. Thank you for that warm welcome and introduction. I'm so honored to be here. To answer your question, I guess the first things I would say is that it's very important for an organization like the Canada Council that's located in Ottawa, that has a broad mandate across the entire country, to understand what's happening in different parts of this country from coast to coast to coast. And it is impossible to do that work sitting behind a screen. You need to engage with people. We need to hear directly from the voices of artists and arts organizations, people who experience the arts. What is the reality? What's happening? What's going on? And especially today, the world is a really weird, uncertain, scary place. And the arts and culture have a profound meaning to all of us, I think, as human beings. So I feel very deeply that the role of the Canada Council and my leadership is to connect the Canada Council first to the arts community, but to demonstrate how investing in a vital, diverse, inclusive, critical arts community will benefit all Canadians and actually will benefit the world, because the world needs Canada. I mean, that might sound like a cliche, but now more than ever, and I cannot think of a more powerful, incredible, inspirational place to start with is with artists and with our arts communities, which are incredibly talented in every single part of this country. That's what I've observed. In terms of transformational leadership, I'm just going to be very frank. I don't identify with that type of language, meaning like, oh, I'm going to transform. The way I see leadership is from a lens of public service. Because I'm the head of Canada Council for the Arts, the mandate of that organization at the very, very root is service. Because we are entrusted with public funding, which means the money comes from all of us, all of our taxes. And with that, I feel comes a real sense of accountability to Canadians, integrity, trust. And so for me, leadership means embodying those values and ensuring that whatever we can do at the Canada Council to inspire trust and credibility, so that when those difficult decisions are made about who gets grants, who doesn't get grants, the systems that we put in place are as fair, inclusive, accessible, and transparent as possible. while at the same time standing for really important values. There were some, questions that were raised at a previous session around what's happening in the U.S. and what would happen to the mandate of the Canada Council should there be changes or governments that come in and think that, well, maybe, the concept of arm's length isn't necessary. It is necessary. We see evidence of this every day, how you need to protect the arts and granting decisions and funding decisions from political interference. And those are, again, tied to what I think is this moment in time where my leadership is critical, which is to standing true to those, some of the profound values, while always demonstrating that integrity and accountability and trust so that we can continue to serve the arts.
Thank you so much. I've just been writing down some of your words, like integrity and trust, which you just finished with. And that's what we're not seeing reflected out in leadership lately. And so thank you for changing my words to what words have resonance. And my next question will feed into that, like, how do you get communities to trust? And I want to talk about Indigenous commitments in terms of trust. Part of the Council's strategic initiative is to ensure that $100 million in funding goes towards Indigenous arts and culture. And I think the deadline was 27 or 26, I can't remember. And it looks like things are really on track. You're at like 90 million already, so that's fantastic. And there has been some initiatives, and particularly in the north, where you're using a co-delivery and self-determination strategy. Can you describe that co-delivery and self-determination initiative? And also, what kind of things have Indigenous communities been saying to you in terms of how can they trust? How can they be more included, and how can it be a fair process based on their values?
It's a really excellent question. So I would say that it's on multiple levels to start with. And the first, I think it has to be an acknowledgement that the very creation of the Canada Council in 1957 was based on a model to eradicate Indigenous cultures and arts. It was based on a model that was racist, discriminatory, and meant to essentially exclude and eliminate. So I think starting from that acknowledgement that that is the history of the Canada Council, and our current chair is Jessie Wente, who is an Indigenous leader, activist, and has been very vocal about the concept of undoing harm, and how does an institution that is based and rooted in a colonial mindset trying to undo harm. And so I would say one of the first things is around the concept of ceding power. And so we created a few years ago a program that's called Creating, Knowing, Sharing the Arts and Cultures of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis People. And the concept of that program is based on the concept of self-determination, where the leadership, the assessment, the applications, the program officers, the team who runs the program are all Indigenous people and have full autonomy and authority to not only deliver the programs, but to develop partnerships, so to do things a little bit on their own terms as opposed to following sometimes the heavy bureaucracy. It's still part of the Canada Council's accountability, which is the other dimension, is that at the same time as you're trying to acknowledge the truths of the past and build reconciliation, there also has to be an accountability taken by an organization like the Canada Council, and as I'm the head of that organization, by me, and to try every way possible to look at how do you cede power, how do you provide the resources, how do you ensure that capacity to make decisions resides with the Indigenous arts communities. And so we have a program, which is one dimension, but we also have started to explore the the examples you used around co-development, and it's a very new way of working, and I root that back in the colonial history of the Canada Council, which is, you know, we're this institution, we know what we're doing, we have a long history, and we know how to do partnerships, and we know how to run programs, but it's reframing all of that and to acknowledge that in many areas we don't know, and we should not be taking the lead. And so we worked very closely with Indigenous communities around trying to serve, and I'll use the North as a good example. We identified the North as an area where we were not getting many applications, especially from Inuit artists. And then starting to analyze, like, what are the reasons why? Well, first of all, we're a Southern organization, we're a colonial organization, we operate in English and French, we have programs that don't resonate, the criteria don't make sense, the idea of competition, so applying for a grant and then competing with others does not resonate. So all of these questions of asking yourself, like, rather than keep trying, like, well, let's just go there and show them our programs. Let's just go and translate our documents in the language there, but they still have to follow our structures. It was some of that reflection and really listening and putting to the community, what can we do to help ensure, because our principle is we want that funding to go to artists who merit it, and those artists deserve to get funding. So that's where the co-development idea came, is we have resources, we have capacity, we have the ability to provide funding, but we don't want to be the ones deciding, running how it works. So we partnered in this particular example with the Inuit Arts Foundation, because not only do we take the lead from an organization that is connected with that community, but it also builds the Canada Council's credibility if you're associated with an organization that is respected by that very community. Because I've had the experience myself, and I've told my colleagues at Council, we're not doing this. We're not going into a community uninvited. You must be invited into this community and not act like you're in charge and you know what you're doing and just showing up. I was just actually talking, so one of my colleagues, Craig Holshoe, is sitting right there. We were just talking about outreach into various Indigenous communities, and one of the things we were saying is absolutely not that we're just going to show up. Oh, guess what? The Canada Council's here. It's like, just pack your bags and leave. You need to develop a relationship, and you need to build that trust and credibility. Especially, I was in a gathering of artists in Manitoba last year, and one of the artists said, you know, it's, I'm not talking to you, Michelle, but I'm talking to you, the Canada Council, but I don't trust you. I don't trust you because of the history and what you represent. And you represent the government, and you represent the federal government, and you represent an institution that was here to eradicate my language, my art form, my culture. And as the representative of the Canada Council, I made it my point to not react to that, not to be defensive, not to be upset, because what that person was saying is the truth. So to accept that as the truth and to say, okay, like, so my answer was, thank you for sharing that, and I agree with you. So, but then what that created was an opportunity for us to talk, and then he came to see me after, and he's like, you know, I didn't mean that personally. I'm like, no, I did not take it personally. I understood what you were trying to say, and that's why I'm here. And so let's start to have a conversation. Anyway, I can go on and on and on, but I hope that answers sort of the gist of what the thinking is behind all of that.
Definitely. Thank you so much. The way that you speak so candidly about your experience, but also candidly about the issues with institutions and the histories in Canada of the institution. And I think, or I know from the short amount of time that I've had conversations with you, that makes a difference. It makes a difference in all ways. And it's going to feed into my next question. You've spoken really candidly in all of the letters that you've put forth in your promotions and our email boxes. And the most recent one that just came out this week, I was really taken with a line, and I'm going to read some of it. And it is, when it comes to the council, I know that many of you feel disconnected from our organization and do not feel well served. It wasn't so much the well served from that I was thinking about, it was the disconnection. It's an institution, it's not a person. It's an entity that sometimes rewards and sometimes makes you feel really terrible about your abilities. And it was just so refreshing to read that you saw that, that you see the ways that we can't be intimate with an institution. And beyond thanking you for noticing that, I want to also talk about how we are assessed through those programs. We are assessed by our peers, by other artists, and there have been some changes to the peer review process. And in this, you talk about that too. I know that you are concerned about the composition of multidisciplinary committees and want to better understand that assessment process. And so I will pose a question based on that. Can you describe the changes to that peer assessment process and how the council will maintain rigorous, discipline-specific adjudication for creative research projects?
That's probably one of the top questions when I was first appointed that I received. So there's two top questions. Juries and the composition of juries and what happened to disciplinary expertise and feedback. Those are the two things that came up over and over again from every single roundtable, letter, email. So when we created our new suite of programs, so for those of you who may not know, in 2017, the Canada Council launched an entirely new suite of programs. We went from 140 programs that were organized by artistic disciplines, so dance, music, theater, visual arts, media arts, writing, and transformed them into 6 programs that were non-disciplinary in nature, but more tied to the type of activity that you want to do. Do you want to do research and creation? Do you want to do touring and dissemination? Do you need operating funding? So organized in a different mindset. One of them is the Indigenous-led program that I spoke about. And with that, we were trying to address a couple of things. One is every time there was a new art form or a new practice or a new way of working, that Canada Council's reaction was, let's create a new program. It became unsustainable to manage 140 different programs, not only from the perspective of the Canada Council, but from the perspective of artists who are trying to navigate, like, where do I go in this system? What was also falling through the cracks was everything that related to interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work. So for any artist or organization that was practicing something that didn't quite fit in theater, didn't quite fit in music, didn't quite fit in dance, it was really difficult to find a place. So we moved to these outcomes-based, non-disciplinary programs. And with that, implemented multidisciplinary juries or peer assessment committees. So lessons learned, there are lessons learned. Some of that did not work optimally because what was happening is a lot of feedback we were receiving around, is this really my peer? If I'm doing something, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, and is it really other people who understand the field of literature who are assessing my work, or is it a dance artist who might be an amazingly accomplished dance artist, but what do they know about poetry? So we were hearing some of this not just from the arts community themselves, but also from peer assessors. So we just did a big research study on our peer assessment process. It's published on our website, and we're now implementing changes. And some of the changes are keeping the benefits of where we saw multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, because there are many artists who work and want to be assessed in that model, but we're bringing back disciplinary pods. So in all the competitions, especially research and creation, so all the grants to individuals, it's if you are applying as a visual artist, you will be assessed in a grouping with peers who have expertise and knowledge in the visual arts. So that would be one concrete example.
I think that's the answer people want to hear. I'm going to move on to something different, but thank you for answering that once again in a truthful way and saying things didn't always work, but streamlining, I can tell, is something that needs to be prioritized. For a long time, the art system, just like social systems from everywhere, have favored the activities of young and upcoming generations. In accordance with the opportunities and needs of these artists in early career stages, the council put into action a few years ago grants for emerging artists. Was it around the same time? It's 2017? Can you describe some of the feedback you will have received from some of these early career artists and how the impact of receiving funding, or how they were impacted by receiving funding?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the Canada Council, many of you may know, is the only federal level of funding for artists. So many arts councils in provinces and cities fund artists, but at the national level, there's only the Canada Council, and it's a key part of what we do since 1957 is we want to fund individual artists. But you're right that there's a spectrum. So there's artists in their early stages, artists in mid-career, senior artists, and we believe that all artists deserve fund. Like there's no lines in between that, in the sense that we reserve funding for emergent artists here and senior artists here. It's really all artists are eligible for our funding. We have heard incredible stories about the impact of that first grant. We have people whose first grant eventually led them to winning the Governor General's Literary Awards. We have stories of that first grant that opened up an entire market because they were able to go on a tour, and that led to another gig and another gig and another gig. So there's a very profound impact for many artists on receiving that first grant, and it also serves sometimes to unlock other funding. So often if you got that grant from the Canada Council and you're approaching another funder or another, a sponsor, often that recognition, so it's not even just about the dollar amount, but it's the recognition that you were assessed by peers and your project got funding. So that also is another dimension where it helps build careers. And on top of it, I would say that those grants, regardless if it's your first grant, your 20th grant, they are enabling risk-taking and the ability for artists to create, to take risks, to try new things, to sometimes fail, and that's okay too. That's part of creation. And so we really see those grants as essential for building vital and innovative and creative sector.
Thank you. I remember my first grant from the Canada Council. It was whole $6,000. That's all I needed.
What was the impact?
Well,
question to you.
Yeah, total validation, I think. Like, it just really made me feel secure. And I had just moved here, and so I felt like I had moved to a new community as an artist instead of somebody trying. And so, it was really impactful.
I love that.
But now, as a mid-career artist, it's a little different.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard being a mid-career artist. Your ambitions and output are at a higher level, but the funding and recognition gaps can sometimes make the work unachievable. In higher education programs like a lot of us teach in, this can be really felt by faculty and sessional instructors whose research is definitely more suited to arts funding than, say, Tri-Council funding. Does the council recognize the financial and career pressures placed on mid-career artists? And are there any actions or discussions happening to support this demographic?
Oh, absolutely. So yes, the council does recognize the pressures on mid-career artists, and I would even say on very senior established artists. It's a myth to think that even if you've had a huge successful career in the arts that you're all set, and many artists don't have retirement plans or financial security. But to tie it back specifically to your question around mid-career, we're aware. We're aware of how precarious it is. We're aware of how critical that funding is. And I talk a lot about positioning the Canada Council as part of a funding ecosystem, because it is impossible to think that the Canada Council, with the resources it has, can possibly serve every deserving artist and every deserving group in all parts of this country. We need to see our funding as part of a system of funding. So the role that cities play, the role that provinces play, the role that the business sector plays, that philanthropy plays, and the Canada Council plays. We have to, so for us it's very important when we look at the question of how do we make sure that artists have not only access to our funding, but have sufficient amounts. There used to be a period in the Canada Council's history where it was, how can we spread the grants as far as possible? And what was happening is that when we were looking at how, the juries would look at the list of all this meritorious organizations, it was always artists, it was always trying to spread it to how many more can we include, how many more can we include? And so started shaving, like if an artist asked for $10,000, it's like, well, maybe they could do it with 6,000 so we could liberate 4 and make it go. And we heard from the arts, from people receiving grants, it's like, well, my project is not viable if I don't get that 10,000, and then I have to take it out of my own pocket. So we made a decision to try and give as close of the amount as possible so that those who do receive the grants can actually make that project work. We are, however, in a situation where the demand and need and merit, I would say, far outweighs the resources available. So just some numbers that are very simple. I don't like throwing numbers. They sometimes don't make sense, so I'll try and make sense of this. Before the pandemic, so say in 2019, we would have received something like 13,000 applications. After, so around 2023, the number's at over 25,000. So it is a huge increase, and in the program that received, 2 programs received the most increases. One is the program that serves artists, the Explore and Create program. So we saw that number of application triple. And the other program that is that has really, really increased in terms of demand is all of our touring and dissemination programs. At the same time, 2 other things happened. One significant is the Canada Council's budget. So the Canada Council's budget before the pandemic was $360 million. We had reached the 5-year doubling of the Canada Council budget. During the pandemic, the Canada Council received emergency pandemic funding that equated an additional $140 million. So the budget of the Canada Council in 22, 23, or 22 was $500 million. You fast forward to 2023, end of pandemic funding, so that's $140 million taken out of the budget, double the applications, and what we noticed is a huge trend in the amount artists were asking for also increased, because a $20,000 grant in 2019 does not have the same value in 2023. It actually represents a reduction due to inflation. So those three dimensions, a huge increase in applications, the reduction of the Canada Council's, the going back to the Canada Council's base budget, and the fact that more was requested in each application led to a point where success rates went all the way down. And I published a letter, early into my mandate saying that the success rates went down to 16%, which was unheard of ever in the history of the Canada Council. So we have been working, I'm veering into another, maybe answering another question, really working hard to making the case for why sustained and increased investment in the arts is absolutely essential. We have data and we have information that speaks to where mid-career artists are and the precarity and the challenges, and why is it so difficult for those artists to access the really, really needed funding. It's part of the context that we're working with.
Yeah, it was, when I was doing my research, it was surprising to see that going back down to base budget, right? We had just started to feel like that was the budget, and it's just the same here in the institution when we're facing financial precarity, and it's like, no, we only have this much. So, and I think we all understand that, and I'm happy to hear that you see that it's not enough, and I'm also happy to hear that you can't be everything to everybody. It's one institution, and it is about a system of funding, and funding at all levels, right? Local and regional. This will be my last question. And some of it I've said, but when artists receive grants from the council, we can feel validation and a sense of belonging because our work is supported by our peers and it connects us to our field of practice through inclusion. Likewise, we know that art can bring people together through shared experiences and can bring joy, shape understanding, foster inquiry, and build or rebuild relationships. You have mentioned in more than one of your open letters the importance of coming together to express our value culturally, socially, and economically. And we all see and recognize today that economic value is the desired value. And so we do have all those stats that show the arts does have an economic value, but unfortunately it's not seen by everyone. I'm wondering if we have this conundrum where we don't have enough funds, so we can't say that the answer is more money without the work to get the more money. Do we consider, or does the council consider that maybe new strategies for just visibility could be the answer to breach these connections and to reconnect to the broader public?
I completely agree with that. It is absolutely essential for everyone who works in the arts sector to talk about the impact the work is having, not just on the practice, so for individual artists, on communities who come and benefit from having access and participation in the arts, to the economic drivers. I mean, so we profoundly believe that the arts contribute, of course, like to our social well-being, our community well-being, our mental health, our human connection, our sense of belonging, our identities, all of it, our cultures, our languages. But the story that has not been told sufficiently is the economic impact, and this is where we are in this moment of time. So I think we have to work constantly on many levels, and we have to work from the place of values and principles, but also seizing the moment. And right now, the moment is around economic. People are very worried about their financial situation, and rightly so. It's a worrying time. Everything costs more. It's difficult for many people to make ends meet. It's difficult for many artists to make ends meet. So Canadians, I think, are generally very concerned about the financial situation. And now with Trump and tariffs and all of this, it's creating a sense of real stress and anxiety. I believe that we can absolutely position the arts and culture as not just a solution, but as an essential part of how we're going to move forward and navigate during these times. So not only do you get a sense of inspiration and hope and optimism and belonging and connection, but we have hard facts that show that the arts and culture sector contributes significantly to the economic well-being of this country, to the tune of $60 billion. And when I talk about the impact of arts and culture on the GDP, which is $60 billion, some mouths, like when you talk to people in finance, they're like, what? Like, did I hear that right? And it's because, I talk about myself, the Canada Council, we have not done a sufficiently good job at articulating that impact. And what we need is all of us to talk about what does that impact mean. So we're trying to do work to make those numbers available. We publish them on our website so that people can have access to this. We try and help support the arts community in telling that story. We tell that story and we use every argument to make the case. And it's one thing for the Canada Council to say the arts need more investment. What makes the whole difference is when the arts sector also says the same thing and we speak in a united voice. And for me, of course, I work at the Canada Council, and what we've said as a commitment is we would like that $140 million back reinvested at the Canada Council, and we commit to give 100% of it back to the arts sector because we're a very well-run organization. We're very efficient, so we don't need to invest more in overhead and administration. Our view is that the arts community needs this investment now, but by investing that money in the arts, there's going to be an incredible return on that investment. There's going to be tremendous qualitative impacts, undeniable. We're talking to people about mental health is one. There's a crisis in this country around mental health. We need to talk about it. People have not come out of the pandemic unscathed, and the world is a really, really uncertain place that causes a lot of anxiety. And we need to talk about how the arts are a place where people can come together, build bridges, break the sense of isolation. But there's also, what we're seeing with downtowns falling apart because people aren't going to see shows. It's too expensive to pay for parking, too expensive to go to restaurants. Like the arts in those communities, whether it's big or small, could be small communities, large urban centers. When you have an art experience, it brings people in. They go, they buy a coffee, they pay for parking. So there's something there that we have not sufficiently told that story. And
I think we're willing to maybe shout all together right now.
Let's do it
and
together.
I think also as Canadians to maybe be more proud of showing in Canada, which we didn't used to. We always were striving, we're striving to be international. But enough of my voice. Let's open the floor to some questions. I want to raise your hand and then, or you can come up to the right mic. Okay. So if you have a question, you can head towards John. He's got the mic. Don't be shy. Karun?
Oh, hi. It's very low, Mike, for a very low voice. Hello, my name's Karun Koenig. I'm the Executive Director of the Jeffrey Rubinoff Sculpture Park. We do not receive any Canada Council funding. I'm also involved with UN Habitat out of Nairobi and recently completed a Canada report on sustainability in cities. One of the things that was really interesting was how difficult it was to find indicators for culture. Sustainability is, of course, a huge topic, both economic, governance, and environmental, but culture was incredibly hard, both to find consistent indicators for, as well as to find kind of mental space for within the urban policymaking community. Yet, when you go to city councils and lots of cities have culture department, an arts department. And I'm just wondering if the Canada Council has a role to play there. So that's question one. And I'm also wondering, Canada is really well known for its social conscience, and I'm just wondering how the Canada Council looks at the side of artistic excellence. I have been extremely pleased with the excellence that Canadian artists display. I'm very active internationally, and I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I think we could lean into that a lot more as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So on your first one around statistics for culture, we are very, very interested and engaged in that because the anecdotal, I feel like some people get it and that's okay, but it doesn't resonate when you step outside of our world and we're in front of Treasury Board and we're in front of finance and we're in front of other sectors where they want concrete data and evidence. So we're doing a lot of work. We have collaborations with Statistics Canada. We also have under with the Canada Council, the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, and UNESCO is the United Nations Education, Social and Cultural Organization, and they, under the arm of culture, are also looking as culture as one of the sustainable goals, and so doing work in that area too. But I think it's scratching the surface. We have not quite arrived, I think, at even how do you develop the methodologies. So one of the areas that I'm very interested in pursuing, which is so timely because we're here in a university, is engaging more strongly with the university research community around research and data in the arts, and could we build some sort of consortium around people like in universities across the country. Anyway, I'm just thinking out loud, but there's a lot of work to be done, but we're very concerned about that. Your other question was excellence. Yes, so yeah, excellence is such a loaded word, and it used to be that the Canada Council, all of our language was around artistic excellence, and we've shifted a little bit to artistic merit, meaning that there's a comparative context. But no matter, like the way I see it is, you go through a system where you put forward your project and it's peers. So I'm not sitting there looking at applications and saying yes, no, like it is really peers who change every time. So it's not the same group of people, and they make the best decisions possible in a comparative context. But I think what comes out of this are incredible Canadian talent, and just we have a lot to be proud of. And I think this is a moment where you talked about pride, and like we don't have this culture of a lot of I don't know if the word is boasting, but talking with a lot of pride about how amazing our Canadian artists are, and we at the Canada Council are going to start doing a lot more of that. Yeah.
I have a question about structuring the school system so that you can let artists in a one-year program, especially into universities, so that they have a better column to stand on. And from there, a direct route to shopping malls and other businesses where staging is used, which means multiple artists can use the, for instance, one-year program and then have their bread and butter in staging, and also see immediately the response from the public that goes shopping or that goes to some other event, how their art needs to shift or how they can concentrate more on it. And my second question is, would it be possible to also install a program from grade 1 to have 45 minutes per week, all children learning dance, like the basic dance, waltz and foxtrot. So by the time they're teenagers, that they just simply feel freer to go to events and just express themselves. Yeah, those are the two things that came to my mind. Thank you.
Oh, those are great questions. I mean, I truly believe that love of the arts starts as a child. So The challenge, though, is for Canada Council, because we're a federal institution, we do not have mandates in education because it's at the provincial level. However, we do sit at many, many, many tables where we can influence and advocate and play that leadership role to talk about the critical importance of having the arts at the youngest of ages. And we also do fund quite a few organizations that are committed to young people's theater, for instance, or theater for young audiences. We have programs of residencies where artists can apply to be part of a residency. But you make an excellent points, and I think it's something that collectively in the world of arts funding we need to prioritize. So thank you for raising that.
Hi there, my name is Paul Walden. I'm a faculty member here in visual arts. I have kind of two questions rolled into one about the relationship between the Canada Council and two other federal agencies, one being Tri-Council. Being at a university, as professors, we do a lot of training, and our colleagues in other departments and other areas of the university, they get access to Tri-Council funding. For us who are practitioners, it's really hard to even come close to anything comparable, and we are technically allowed to apply for SHRC grants, and they say that they support research creation projects, but they don't really recognize the kind of research that we do. Our CVs don't make sense to them, and the work that comes out of it, doesn't really equate. And I really would like to advocate for some kind of relationship with Tri-Council for some kind of stream that is more geared towards academics so we can support graduate students the way that our colleagues in other departments are. And the second one is the CRA. So because we get our grants as individuals rather than our grants going to the university ourselves, we ourselves are responsible for hiring people, paying the taxes, and submitting all our expenses, which is a huge job. And every time that I've been audited, and it's been a few times now, and every time it's been after I've gotten a Canada Council grant, the federal government does not recognize the Canada Council as an entity. Every time they say, who are you? What is this thing that you got money for? And why didn't you get the income again the second year? So those are my questions.
Those are great questions. So very concretely on your first question, okay, so I'm just gonna say I'm very candid, open, but just don't quote me and put me in social media like, picture of Michelle Chawla, she said this. I'm just going to go with, because I want to share as much as I know. I'm not sharing secrets, but one really positive development is we're working much closer now with SHRC than ever before. So one of the things that's concretely happening is they're working on, I don't know if they're internal documents, but a little context briefs, I think, or some sort of analysis of the current state of a certain sector. And thank goodness they reached out to the Canada Council because they're working on one on the arts. And again, not to be quoted in any social media, but the first draft we saw were like, it's not really what's happening today. So in a way, I wasn't at all, it was more like, thank you for consulting with us. We have lots of context that we can offer, and I think that's opening the door to building a different type of relationship and building the understanding, and so hopefully that will result in more access and a better understanding of the type of work that should be funded. Because I said it earlier, we cannot be the only place that the arts get funded. And I agree that there's pockets of money in the budget of SHRC. It's at least double the one of the Canada Council, if not triple. So there is money there, and the arts should have access to it, is kind of what I think. On your other question, which was, oh yeah, oh boy, yeah. So CRA is what I call advocacy and influence. So we are a bit like everyone else trying to figure out who do we talk to. So one thing is, a few years back, they did update I have the word in French, it's in fiche, like it's a bulletin, or it's a description of how do you fill out certain things, and one of them was on grants and awards. So we have been trying to reach out to do a refresh, because what we realize is ourselves, we have to educate CRA, even though we're a part of the federal family, and so we're doing that work and always advocating for our grants and how they should be treated through the tax system. So it's very actively pursued.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
How are you
Nice
doing?
to see you.
Good to see you too. Chris Gilpin from Capital Regional District. I just want to say that, you mentioned in your recent letter that you were acknowledging disconnection between the Canada Council and artists and across the country, but I also want to acknowledge that you have, and appreciate, really that you have been leading by example in connecting across the country with artists, and I think that we should really appreciate the fact that you're here in Victoria for a second time in less than 12 months, and you're traveling all across the country. So my question is that, arts are different from province to province, region to region, city to city, and you've been doing all of this traveling. So I'd really love to know from your perspective, what are the things that you're seeing, and maybe are there any things that you're seeing that are distinct about this community as compared to other communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that there's both very strong commonalities from coast to coast to coast and real distinctions. So some of the commonalities I would say are things like, I was talking in an earlier group, like when you work in a smaller region that's close to an urban center, so talking Kelowna to Vancouver, very similar conversation when I was in Sydney, Nova Scotia, in relation to Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, and we saw this happening, or I've heard these, the differences and the challenges when you work in a smaller community with maybe less audiences, less philanthropy. So that is like an example of a common trait. One thing that stands out, and I mean compared to the entire country, in BC, in Victoria, in Vancouver, and is a strong, it's one of the few places where social justice issues are raised in these types of gatherings in a way that is very unique compared to the rest of the country. Environmental, climate issues, up north comes up a lot, but this is the only place when I think of all the other provinces where consistently the issues around climate action, environmental sustainability, the role that the arts have to play in that. And the third area is housing and how expensive it is to live here. It comes up all the time for artists, like artist studios, how can I make a living in Vancouver? The taxes are so high, or in Victoria. That the only other city where I would hear something similar is Toronto, but compared to the rest of the country, that comes out as a really significant issue. So those would be like the top three things that are unique to this place. So that's a great question. Nice to see you.
Oh, now it's tall. Thanks, Chris. Hi, my name is Erin. I'm from the Arts and Community Infrastructure Foundation. Thank you for being here today. I wanted to touch a little bit on, I guess, the idea of collaboration. You mentioned, I guess you brought it up with Shrink, there being a little bit of collaboration, and also you've also mentioned being a funding ecosystem. Is there collaboration happening with other funders to kind of figure out what gaps there are, to see where there might be overlaps that are causing undue gaps? And then also, those funders typically want more concrete data. What kind of impact does the arts have? Now, you mentioned 60 billion across Canada, but if we're talking about regional funders, they want something a little bit more specific. And my last data I can look at is from 2010 stat, being, it's $170 million for, the CRD impact. But, that means that where we have 2023 being a 15.9% increase in arts economy, in the arts sector. So again, that's better, closer to, but 2010 to be able to illustrate an economic impact to kind of show the importance of a project is hard. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's it. Just how are you collaborating?
Great question. So to answer your question, do we work with other funders? every single day. I'm not overstating it. Even here, we just had the BC Arts Council sitting in on a session earlier. They may be here. I'm not sure if they already. Yes, there she is. It is really, and Chris is another example. So it is critical for us to constantly be working with our counterparts because together we can come up with really innovative ideas. And one example I'll use around data is we look at our funding from the national level. So we look at it from the provinces and territories and how does that distribution look like? And when we have identified, for instance, certain provinces that for significant decades almost have not really been as successful in receiving funding from the Canada Council. So we undertook, and I'll use the example of Alberta, we undertook a full year of putting together a working group of the Canada Council, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, the Edmonton Arts Council, and the Calgary Arts Development Agency, and for an entire year created a data working group to analyze, not only could we agree, because by the way, anytime you look at numbers, everybody has a different approach. So we had completely different methodologies of identifying gaps, so it took a year to all agree that this should be the approach that we're going to take to understand the data. Then we added, okay, so what's the province? You know, what is the impact of their data? What about the cities? To paint a portrait, to then come up with what do we do now? And so we created these 2 consultants that we're going to be hiring locally in Edmonton and Calgary to help us at the Canada Council better understand the realities. Another example of a partnership with our funder counterparts is the Government of Yukon, and we talked about a co-delivery agreement. I used the example of the Inuit Arts Foundation, but we have 2 other co-delivery agreements with the North, and they're with the 2 funders, the Government of Northwest Territories and the Government of Yukon. And we are co-delivering funding on the ground to serve those artists. So it's very much a way of working, and I think it's the only way. Cannot work in isolation. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I'll just let people know we've got about 5 minutes. So if we can just have, I'm probably going to have to end it at Eve. Are you in line? So short questions, maybe 1 question. That would be great. Thank you.
So I served you water, but I spilt it too. Just, yeah. Hi.
This is very general. I don't know if it's like specifically a you thing. The easiest thing ever, once you get home to recover from a long day, is like to go on your phone. And I know you were just marketing arts as like a path towards mental health. How do we make people believe this? How do we how do we motivate people to like spend more time outside and less time in their pajamas?
That is the question that I think we're 50 people in this room, we probably have 50 different ideas. This is my personal opinion. It's about having the opportunity to have that experience. I think there's a deep sense of isolation and finding ways to have connections. And it's not easy to be invited into places. Sometimes you don't feel like you belong. I mean, I went through years of like being intimidated by going into an art gallery because it looked so austere, and I don't know, I didn't feel like I belonged. So how do we break down those barriers? And you realize once you go in, like how exciting it is to talk to an artist and the gallery owner, and people like really get passionate, and then you feel like you're part of it. But that it's that barrier of access of, do I feel like I belong here? And I guess my advice would be to anybody is, how do you invite people in a way that they feel welcomed and safe and not intimidated? Because sometimes, you know, you have this image of like, I mean, like I'm in awe of sitting beside her. Like I'm like, oh my God, I was reading her bio. I'm like, oh, okay. But then you're like, no, it's good. Like she's a wonderful human being. And even though she's got all these accomplishments, like it's building I think the human connection. Now I have kids who are in their early 20s who are addicted to their phones for sure. But so I yell at them all the time. I'm like, get off those phones. I'm sure they can't stand me at times, but you expose them to something and you force them out of their phone scrolling, and sometimes that connection happens, and sometimes it doesn't. It's like, leave me alone. But I love your question, and like I said, I think every single person in this room probably has a better answer than mine. But thank you for putting it out there.
Hello. I have a quick question, just a yay or nay. My name is Eve, and this is probably a question for next year's graduates, but I'm the chair of the visual art exhibition, and I was looking on the website and couldn't parse out whether we are a art group or an organization, because we are a group that has been brought together by an organization. So would a graduating exhibition be eligible for a grant from the Canada Council?
So I am thrilled that my colleague Craig, who's going to lift his hand there, he's going to give you a business card, because we're going to make sure that you talk to somebody. Oh, and he even has an answer. Isn't that even better? Yeah.
Concern is that many of the artists in our show aren't professional artists. Many people are going into a completely different career. So does that? It
is for professional artists, but it's always good to know what's available. So what I would suggest is connect with us. So because even if we're able to let you know what are all of our programs, but I always say, look in the city, look at the province, because the more you're aware of what are the possibilities as you enter a career in the arts, the more you're set up to then understand how to apply for a grant. So I think it's really good that you're asking these questions now as you contemplate a career in the arts, because the more information you have and the more guidance, then you're better set up to figure out how to get access to that funding. So I would say to everyone in the audience, if you haven't had a chance to talk, but you'd like to talk about a project or opportunity to apply for funding, so either come and see me or Craig, and we'd be happy to share our contact information. But I should also say that one thing that we did the last year is make all of our contact information available on our website. So that was a big change. I will be the first to say, it was really difficult to figure out how to reach someone at the council. A little bit tied to the letter, I think it was one of the reasons. It's who are you? So we are all, including my information, so you can just click on a link and the email will come to me, and we answer all of our emails. And if you don't remember our names, well, some of our photos are there too. So if you remember faces and you don't remember names, you'll be like, oh, she looks familiar, let me write to her. But so I do want to say that also, that we really want to be of service, and if we can provide advice and guidance to anyone about anything involving the arts, we're happy to do that. So thank you for asking your question. Yes, okay. Absolutely, because we're here. We might as well try and give as many information as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to have to end the question period.
We can talk after if you'd like.
And we will...
There's one person standing there.
You want to do one? Can we?
Or...
Quick? Okay. Thanks.
I may to you. Sorry, I'm legally blind, so I don't know if you've signaled to me or I'm listening.
Go ahead.
Please
one more question, but not too long.
Okay. I'm a 16-year-old. I've been using an AI assistant in providing me lessons in music since I was 6 years old. I now am able to go with my subscription to the Berlin Philharmonic. I hover over a group of players. I can sit anywhere I want in the orchestra. It's an absolute thrill. I have a sense that is developed through the course of my life of the universal artist, of the miracle of engagement with others as I play my instrument. I see it, I can sit in with any group, anywhere, any people. What has the Canada Council done to encourage me, to provide me with access to these things, to be there with me as the digital age continues to innovate in ways that are making engagement in the art, one of the most important things in the world, to share the spirit of acting as a creator with others.
That's a wonderful comment. Thank you for that. Well, for sure, I mean, the very heart of what the mandate of the Canada Council is to support, promote the arts. But at the same time, we're not the top-down know-it-all. I think we have to work with community, with artists, with organizations who have at the heart of their mandates engaging with the public, engaging with audiences, engaging with humans and people. So the more we can do to support those organizations and artists who have at the heart of their work engagement, I think then collectively we'll be able to make the arts shine and be at the heart of all of our experiences. So I really loved your question, and I'm going to keep trying to serve the community as best as we can, especially in these times when we're looking at AI and digital and technology, and how could we do this with the sound ethical backbone to it all, and working with the community to best serve. So I really appreciate that question. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I'd just like to reflect to you that, you know, as your interviewer, you've made me feel very welcome and not intimidated in any way. And so that's good. I mean, you're the head of the Canada Council. I should be intimidated.
Never.
And I think we all feel the same way. You've talked so candidly and how much we appreciate that. So please join me in thanking Michelle.
And thank you. You're an amazing interviewer. I loved it. It's actually a very nice conversation.
Yeah. And just a reminder, this room has to be vacated.
Thank you.
In 10 minutes for, I'm sure, a music performance or, oh, wow, thanks, a class. But there will be, you can, I'm sure, find someone to talk to in the hallway. And Michelle will be here tomorrow for some other engagements with faculty.